Good morning, everybody. I will let everyone kind of file in here. Let's see. I have been listening to PT on Ice for quite a while now, but this is the first time actually behind the camera, so I'm super excited. Good morning, Allie. So my name is Alexis Morgan, and I'm a student physical therapist, and I graduate here in December, so coming up pretty quickly. And I'm really excited to talk to you all this morning and to bring Monday with a Pop to you all. We will let some people come in here, and then we'll get rolling. So, I don't know about you guys, but we had a pretty good get some stuff done type weekend. Hope you all had the same, as well as a nice refreshing weekend to get ready to go for the week. So, I am going to go ahead and get started here. So, a couple of weeks ago, did a presentation for the APHPT certification group, and it was called Early Parent Loss and Its Effects on Populations. And so whenever I was asked to do a PT on Ice for Monday with a Pop, I thought that this would be a fantastic video to share with you all. As far as my perspective goes on why what we're doing is so important for our populations. So I'm going to actually flip the camera around and show you all a presentation. So if you're listening to this later on the podcast, feel free to listen, but there are some good graphics that come up later on in the presentation that tell the story alongside of my voice. So I encourage you to listen and watch the video later if you get the chance. So I am going to go ahead and start this and flip the camera around. Does it work if I turn it sideways? Or does it make all of you have to turn your head sideways? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, good deal. So, sorry if I'm shaking the camera a little bit this morning. Okay, so early parent loss and its effects on population. So like I said, my name is Alexis Morgan. Gosh, I'm shaking. I'm kind of nervous. Okay, so we know oh my gosh, this is not gonna work. My hand is shaking way too much. Let's see if this makes it better. A little bit there. Okay, so we know that we know that 7 out of 10 deaths are due to chronic diseases. And we talk a lot about this in the APHPT certification. And if you haven't done it already, I would really encourage you to sign up for the January cohort, because it is an awesome certification to really understand what problem we're facing today. So 7 out of 10 deaths are due to chronic diseases, and of those, half of them are just from heart disease and cancer alone. And we learn a lot about how this affects employers. So on presenteeism, which is like your zombie workforce, they're there, but they're not really there mentally. Absenteeism, so folks aren't even coming to work. And then people leaving the workforce early because they're sick or because they die. And employers are losing a lot of money, as well as families are losing a lot of money. So we know all of this in response to the employers. But what about the families of, and the children of, and the friends of these men and women who are getting these diseases? When these folks get these diseases, when they die, the families and children and friends of these individuals who are left behind, their identities can change. And we talk a lot about in APHPT lives under care. So how many individuals you are caring for, and those would all count as lives. Well, I'm here to argue this morning that these lives under care are exponentially larger than what we ever even dream of, because there's families of these individuals and children and friends. And when one individual leaves this earth, then that leaves all these other people who were cared for from them uncared for anymore. And so this lives under care model, we must realize that it's so much bigger than what we even recognize today. And so it's a really big deal to have somebody under your care. And moving forward, just keep this in mind. And so I'm bringing this to you all this morning as a daughter's perspective. And this is me and my mom. And this was actually the last summer that we got to spend together. She died when I was 11. And this is my mom and my dad in the picture that is housed in my closet that I see every morning getting ready. And then this is my nightstand. So if you can see it here, there's this book called The Motherless Daughters, The Legacy of Loss. And over the past year, I've spent a lot of time exploring this aspect of my life and trying to figure out how I can turn this traumatic experience that has been with me for now 12 years into something good. And so I hope to start sharing that with you all this morning. So let's start with the facts. So early parent death happens a lot. So 1 in 9 Americans lose a parent before the age of 20. 1 in 9. And actually, in my classroom as a child growing up, when my mom passed away, I actually had 2 other children in my class who had lost their mothers within the year before and after me. It's a really, really big problem, and it's just getting worse. So 1.5 million children are living in a single parent household because one of their parents died. And this is not even including the children who are raised by grandparents who the grandparents pass away, or an aunt or an uncle. This is just biological parents. So realizing that 1.5 million is a lot, and it's an understatement. And like I said, the mortality rates are only getting worse, which is why we're all here this morning and watching this, and why we're all here to create PT version 2.0, because we can't stand these rates to continue rising. It's absolutely absurd. And in this book, The Motherless Daughters, there is they looked at the women who knew how their parents died. Actually said that 44% were cancer and 10% were heart failure. And so that is actually just in line with what we already know, that 50% of these deaths are cancer and heart failure. And we know that a lot of these can be prevented just from lifestyle factors. So I'd like to take a minute to share with you, again, from my perspective of a woman who lost her mother as a young girl. So when asked how long she believes that she'll live, she actually believes that she's going to live 15 years less than those without early parent loss. And if you've been to an ICE course, it has been drilled in your head about patient expectations. And so we know that if these people are believing this, what the outcome could truly be, just simply because they believe it. There's an interesting mechanism called the counterphobic mechanism, which is how someone confronts feelings of vulnerability. They actually confront it with doing the action of the invulnerable. So the classic example is someone who is afraid of heights and who goes and skydives and thinks that, okay, well, if I'm afraid of it, I'm just going to go and I'm going to face it. And then I'm going to realize that I'm not going to die from the heights, and then I'll be over my fear. Well, women who have lost their mothers at a young age can actually go through a similar experience, only it turns out really badly for their health. So they're more likely to engage in harmful health habits like smoking or eating poorly. And because of this and other factors, there's actually a 50% higher all-cause mortality rate for these individuals. And just thinking on the population level moving forward, this is not good. This is not helping us. So something's got to change here. So there's an argument of, is the daughter modeling her parent behavior, or is it a consequence of bereavement? And I'm going to argue this morning that it's actually a consequence of the bereavement. So what happens is there's a sense of this fatalism of hopelessness, and it's hard to imagine yourself living past the age that your mother was when she died. And if you can't envision yourself as a 60-year-old, a 70-year-old, an 80-year-old woman, then it's really hard to know if you're even going to live to that age. And it makes you feel hopeless and like, well, if my destiny is just to die young, or if the disease is already in my genes, then why should I even take care of myself now? And I've had these thoughts. I've believed this exact thought, and it's been education that has brought me out of those trenches. And so I hope that through this all, we realize that we've got to educate these individuals that it's not their destiny, and that they can take hold of their futures. And so here is a timeline. So on the x-axis is time moving across, and then on the y-axis is generations. So we're going to start at the top and then work our way down. So we'll start here with just this family. A couple and then a child. And your average American family is not moving very much, not fueling very well, or recovering, enduring, or connecting. Those are the 5 elements that we talk about at APHPT. And your average household family is not really up to par with any of those or all of those elements. And so what happens when the mother dies or a spouse dies? Well, it actually sets that child up for a lot of risks. One of those, presenteeism at home. So we talk about it in the workforce, that there's the body that is there, but the mind is elsewhere. And this can be a really big problem in the household. And then there's also an interesting study on classroom behavior. There's a lot of really bad things that come from out of the child when a parent passes. So withdrawal, disengagement, absenteeism, the quality of work is not as good, and they're less reliable in turning in assignments. And so what does that mean moving forward for this child? They learn these behaviors, they go into high school, they go into college, and it just doesn't seem to work out. And lastly, that child has a higher risk of having anxiety, of acting out, low self-esteem, and low feelings of competence. So you can see here that this moving forward just doesn't look good. But what does it look like? So now moving forward in time, looking at this woman, what are her risks as a woman? Well, we've previously discussed a lot of them, but overeating is one of them. Overspending, alcoholism, drug abuse, shoplifting, overachieving, all of this to fill a void that she never had that nurture, never experienced that nurture. So she's trying to fill that void. And all of this sets her up for early death. And so here's where the real problem remains. What if she has a child? And what if she experiences that early death? This cycle just continues until somebody one of these individuals breaks it. So moving forward, let's talk again about this family. What if they are experiencing those 5 elements of move, fuel, recover, they're enduring and connecting? What if we are intervening at this family's level to make sure that whenever the inevitable comes, they can be ready for it? So what are the benefits that could happen? Well, an active involvement of a stable adult who cares can move the needle greatly. And that can be us. That can be us involved in that family's life, or that can be us facilitating connection with other families so that these children are taken care of, the remaining spouse is taken care of. To give that child a sense that she matters and that she counts in the world. And I'm given the facts this morning of 1 in 9 Americans losing their families, losing a parent early. I'd imagine that some of you here this morning have also been in the same boat as me. And you know that it means the world when you have someone who gives you that sense that you matter and that you count. And then if we can help these individuals actively cope, then what does that do for that woman moving forward as an adult? She can experience post-traumatic growth. She can feel empowered and independent, self-reliant, resilient. And then when she has a child, look at what that sets the child up for great success. So we can intervene here at these couples level, at the child level, when nothing bad has happened yet, and we can prepare them. We can intervene at that spouse who's remaining, at the child who lost a parent, and at the woman's level who lost a parent earlier on in life. And that is how we move the needle in population health. This is how we change the future of our generations after us. So we've got to connect to endure as a society and a tribe, as family units, and as individuals. So here's all these references, and one of the biggest ones was the Motherless Daughters book that I've been reading, and I'd like to read an excerpt from that. So as they shuffled through the ferns and the sorrel, they reached a small, odd group of redwoods growing in a circle around this charred stump. And that burned trunk stood about 6 feet high, and the trees surrounding it were young and healthy. And the park rangers call these clusters the family circle. Or you could also call them the mother tree and her daughters. And this is why. So that in the redwood ecosystem, the buds for the future trees are contained in these pods on the side, and they're called burls. And they're tough brown knobs that cling to the bark of the mother tree. And when the mother tree is logged or blown over, or she burns, destroyed by fire, in other words, when she dies, the trauma stimulates the growth hormones of those burls. And then the seeds release and the trees sprout around her, and they create the circle of the daughters. And so the daughters' trees grow by absorbing the sunlight that her mother seeds them when she dies. They receive the moisture and nutrients they need from their mother's root system, which remains intact underground even after her leaves die. Although her daughters exist independently of her mother above ground, they continue to draw sustenance from her underneath. So thank you all for joining me this morning, and I hope that this did something for you this morning, and that you look at life a little bit differently this morning and look at your patients a little bit differently. And I also want to thank you for being part of this PT version 2.0. And this is how we're all going to change the world together. So thanks for being here, and I look forward to interacting with you all on here or on Twitter. Please feel free to add any comments or questions that you have. And with that, I will sign off. See you guys.